Slow and hello and welcome back to Zeelamo Academy seminar series. I'm your host, Shonem Osman. We hope you all are in good health, and thank you for tuning in for our 23rd seminar entitled The Triple Curses Effect on Kurdistan Region's Economy and Self-Sufficiency. Zeelamo Academy is committed to the advancement of education, particularly in science, technology, and the arts. And in line with our mission, our seminar series is a key part of our efforts in providing educational content for our participants globally. And so today I'm delighted to be joined by our viewers and to introduce our honored speaker, Professor and Dr. Almas Heshmati, a well-known economic professor globally. Professor Almas Heshmati is a professor of economics at Jönköping University in Sweden. Professor Heshmati has held similar positions at Sogang University, Korea University, Seoul National University, University of Kurdistan Hawler, and the MTT Agrifood Research, Finland. He was a research fellow at the World Institute for Development Economics Research, the United Nations University from 2001 to 2004. From 1998 until 2001, he was an associate professor of economics at the Stockholm School of Economics. He has a Ph.D. degree from the University of Gothenburg in 1994, where he has held a senior researcher position until 1998. His research interests include applied microeconomics, globalization, efficiency, productivity, growth with application to manufacturing and services, environmental economics, and well-being. In addition to more than 200 scientific journal articles, he has published books on EU Lisbon Process, Global Inequality, East Asian Manufacturing, Chinese Economy, Technology Transfer, Information Technology, Water Resources, Landmines, Power Generations, Renewable Energy, Development Economics, World Values, Poverty, Well-being, and Economic Growth. This all goes without saying, but Professor Heshmati is clearly very well versed in the field of economics, and we are fortunate to have him present and share his expertise with us. I do ask viewers that if you have questions to please hold off on asking them, and if you can ask them using the camera and audio, that would be very helpful. So thank you for joining us, Professor Heshmati, and I'll hand over the platform to you now.
Thank you very much, Shonem, for your kind introduction, and I thank Kak Jamal and Zeelamo Academy for making this seminar possible. And I hope I can frequently visit you and give seminar related to Kurdistan region mostly. My presentation, as you mentioned, is about curses effects on Kurdistan region's economy and self-sufficiency. And in doing so, I first introduce you to some background, then the curse of natural resources, that is one of the main curses. Then development of oil and gas industry is another one that is related to curses related to this one. Then we have institutions, transparency and accountability, that is the third one. Then I will go through the state of agriculture and oil and gas industry that are the main industries in Kurdistan region. Look at capacity condition, look at petroleum and agriculture and their role in development, some summary, policy recommendation, and I give also suggestion for Kurdistan national legal team as a long-term solution to our problems. So the background to tell you something is about Kurdistan region it has been agricultural society in a stage of partial transformation to industry, services, and information technology society, but in terms of consuming, not really producing. Then there is a rapid urbanization that more than half of the population live in cities. We have political rent-seeking, we have business-driven development strategy, that there is mostly politicians are involved in this business-driven development strategy. Means it's not national development strategy, is business-driven. So we have high dependency on hostile neighbors and economics of oil and gas, and extraction is done by foreign companies, not by nationals. So the region suffers from triple curses. That is natural resources, that is inefficiency and rigidity of our governance and institutions. And then we have an education system that in general in Middle East and in particular in Iraq was developed to train inefficient and corrupt public servants. So it was not to serve as a mechanism to support private development, but it was for public servant training. So there is a desire to diversify the economic activity. For instance, sources of revenue be diversified to promote national interest and also increase the region's self-sufficiency. So that is the background to this presentation. So economic diversification in long-term is a long-term solution to high economic dependency and curses of natural resources, corrupt and inefficient institutions. So diversification can take place in agriculture, in industry and services, and also both in private and public sectors. So in private sector, it refers to private sector development and generation of new jobs and sources of income that is taking place. Then we have diversification in public sector can be achieved through downsizing of inefficient public services provision, and also privatization of some public services to make it more efficient. Diversification in public revenue can be done through development of national taxation system and broadening tax base to reduce dependency on oil and gas industry. Then we have a combination of those three measures can diversify the economy and reduce dependency on natural resources. Natural resources is good for economic development, but not to be highly dependent on it and waste it. That is what I mean by reducing dependency on natural resources. So resource abundant countries, for instance, Nigeria, Ghana, Bolivia, Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, they have failed to utilize their natural resources in their development. The curse causes low economic growth, corruption, inefficiency, and high dependency, and also, of course, brain drain. So those are like the curse effects of use of natural dependency. Then we have countries like Finland, Norway, Canada, and Australia. They have been successful examples of countries that are rich of natural resources and extract natural resources. We have also Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore that are developed countries that their development is, they have used disciplined human resources, not natural resources to develop. And they have been growing very fast. So the newly industrialized economies are serving as a role model, like Finland, like Taiwan, like Korea, for next tier of economies, emerging economies like China, like Vietnam. So the challenges facing oil and gas exporting countries are economic, institutional, social, and political. And we face all these things in Kurdistan region. So economy of Kurdistan region has developed quite fast and in recent years, and it heavily depends on revenue from oil and gas industry. So there is a suspicion that oil may cause socioeconomic ills in the society. And here we investigate the curse of oil and gas in the region. So we look at possible link between the curse of oil and gas and fast-growing consuming service sector, the decline in agricultural sector, and slow development of industrial sector. So they all might be related to this dependence on oil and gas. So the curse of and blessing effects on the other areas include, for instance, education, labor market, manufacturing, public employment program. They have gained from the blessing of oil and gas. But we have also bureaucracy, corruption, business-driven development, and concentration of assets that is among the the curse effects of oil and gas industry. So we need diversification into areas along the value chain, other resources, other sectors, self-sufficiency, and also be able to export to reduce this dependency. Then the right to control and manage oil and gas resources, better security, and serving as a gate for Iraq enable KRG to develop the oil sector. Proven reserves in Kurdistan is 45 billion barrel oil and 3.24 trillion cubic meters of gas. And the region is divided into different exploration blocks that different international oil companies are extracting. So the oil contracts signed is mainly revenue sharing, and they last for 25 to 50 years each, and then they might be also extended. And Turkey operators, oil operators, and KRG, they have built pipelines to transport the oil and gas through Ceyhan in Turkey. And the oil extraction can bring both opportunities and risk, not only economic, but also political. So public policy should promote the blessing and prevent the curse of oil and gas that prevents development of other industries in the economy. So Dutch disease, that is shift away workforce from agriculture and development of industry toward petroleum and consuming service sector. Remember, service sector in many countries is producing, is like information technology, media, aviation. But in our case, service is just a consuming industry. Then telecom, transportation, wholesale, retail, hospitality industry, agriculture, construction, they developed differently in the region. So the region faces challenges to invest in agriculture and industry, and their share of GDP is relatively very low because big share of GDP comes from oil and gas. Then difficult to develop industry sector because of lack of industrial policy, qualified labor, underdeveloped universities, landlocked region, business-driven development strategy that is consumption-oriented, inadequate infrastructure, and inability to protect local production, say agriculture or industry production. Then low and volatile oil and gas market prices also another economic challenge for the region, which is frequently facing it. So the government's increase in public spending caused budget deficit that they have borrowed a lot of money in recent years because of the war with ISIS and because of budget deficit, because of low oil prices. It can be managed through resource fund building, that you have a resource fund during the peaks, you save some, and then you use it during recessions. And of course, also diversified production and also having a taxation system. Then I am editing a book series of Springer that is called Perspectives on Development in Middle East and North Africa region. There are two books that is related to Kurdistan published in this area. One is Institutional Design and Capacity to Enhance Effective Governance of Oil and Gas Wells, the Case of Kurdistan Region, which is authored by Hazal Azer. This was her PhD thesis. Another one is The Syrian Crisis, Effects on Regional and International Relations by Danya Khatib from I think is from Syria or Lebanon, from Lebanon probably, is from there. So if you have any manuscript about Middle East, about the region, you are welcome to submit it. This map, it shows discovery and development of blocks of oil and gas in Kurdistan region. As you can see, the whole region is divided into blocks and signed to international oil companies. So this is a robbery because even government of Iraq keeps everything in national interest and never gives away a plot of oil and gas. So, but Kurdistan region, they did it, and they have done it 50 blocks, that is entire region, and that is a contract for 25 to 50 years. You can see that the block's name, you can see the petroleum production discovery, and also production discovery and exploration. Then you have different cities located, different oil companies, and which year they have signed from 2007 to 2013. So they are in total, there are 50. So there is no more to allocate to international oil companies. So the region's profit sharing contracts, it looks like this, that you have a total oil extracted, that one part goes to royalty, goes to the regional government. Another part is covering the expenses for the extraction, and also another part goes to profit, and this profit is divided between the contractors and KRG, and this is a structure how they have this profit sharing. When it comes to organization of Ministry of Natural Resources that is responsible for oil and gas, we have the parliament, then we have policy making, this is profit sharing contract, this is regulatory bodies, we have Ministry of Natural Resources, management committees, and some subcommittees. That is how it is organized, the industry. If we look at the best examples of such a structure, organizational structure, is the Norwegian one, that you have a parliament, you have a Norwegian government, you have policy making, regulatory, then is 5 ministries are involved. Ministry of Petroleum, that is a number of oil companies, that is national oil companies, not foreign, national. Then we have Ministry of Finance that manages government pensions fund, petroleum tax office, and then we have Ministry of Labor that looks at safety in the industry. We have Ministry of Fisheries that and coastal that looks at environmental dimension. Then we have Ministry of Environment that looks at climate, pollution, and so it means a lot of industry ministries that are involved in this sector. So it's not like ruled by corrupt, say, leaders mismanaging it. Then we come to another reason for adverse experience of resource-rich countries can be the quality of governance and national institutions. And resource-abundant countries with strong institutions have higher performance. The weak institutions cause a decline in productivity and economic growth. So it means we are subject to this kind of forces. Then research and economic management, politics, legal environment, technology, social aspects helps to identify weakness of the institutions and the structure of the petroleum sector to be able to overcome those challenges and barriers. So the current Kurdistan institutions are suffering from lack of separation of rules, causing stronger negative curse effect compared with countries that have institutions that represents national interest. So transparency is the right of the public and obligation of the government, and a key factors to avoid mismanagement and social conflict. But we lack this issue of transparency. So transparency prevents corruption and rent seeking. Some groups block political reform to protect their rents, and this leads to slowing down reforms and productivity growth. So it means transparency is a very key factor to prevent those negative factors. So examples of active, non-transparent activities by KRG are, for instance, lack of accountability. We don't have public statistics because Statistical Bureau was shut down when Saddam's security forces, they left the region. So since then, we don't have Bureau statistics. And then, of course, we don't even have a national account. If you look at a family, they know what is their budget, the income and expenses. But even KRG, after 30 years of governance, still they don't have public statistics and they don't have national account. So it means it's a very primitive type of governance. So transparency can lead to cooperation among political parties, and in relation to federal government, it can also reduce the public mistrust in KRG, so it's positive to them, and also reduces probably intergovernmental conflict, both within the region and also within Iran. Then publication of information on all contracts, revenue, public spending, and will build trust between government and the society and reduces corruption and abuse of power and rent-seeking behavior. So natural resource sector has three interest groups. One is oil companies, another who extracts the oil and gas, another is government who regulates and spends the money, and also the general public, which benefits from the public service and development. So accountability is to provide information to the public to ensure that decision-making pursues national and public interest and welfare development. Corruption and mismanagement of resources slows down the economic growth, increases inequality and poverty, especially inequality in our region. Intra-regional investment flows allow part of the revenue through public procurement to be transferred to individuals. And this is basically, government is a spending machine that takes the government budget and give it through procurement, public procurement, to private interest. So that's why politics, business are very much integrated, and governance is very much integrated. So revenues are invested in import, because if you invest in agriculture, it takes 10 years before the tree can give fruit. But if you go to the border to Turkey, you can do it 100 times per year, so your money is circulating faster and you have control over the capital. So growing asset concentration in few hands with political influence has resulted in business-driven development strategy, not a national welfare development strategy. So evolution of agricultural society can be divided into resistance period, destruction period, self-ruling, and all for food program, and also federal governance program period. So during the resistance period, Kurdistan region was a poor agricultural society, self-sufficient in food supply, and agriculture was main source of income for rural population. During the destruction, Saddam destroyed 3,000 villages, mined farm and pasture land and sources of water, which was very destructive. During the oil and food program, the local production was substituted with imported goods and with disastrous outcome for the sector. During the self-governance, the destructive infrastructure, limited resources, inefficiency, internal conflict, and low capability prevented the sector's rehabilitation and reconstruction. So during the federal governance era, this means after 1991, during these 30 years, recent 30 years, import-based businesses prospered and local production was neglected and declined. Traditionally, border has been a solution to all supply problem for the Kurds. That's why they call us smugglers, because whenever you have a problem, you don't use your own resources to solve it. You immediately go to the border to solve it. And the inability of KRG and no will to regulate imported food had a very negative impact on agricultural sector, domestic production. So bureaucracy, inefficiency, consumerism, speculative investment, and biased urban-rural development strategy deteriorated the conditions of marginalized agriculture. So marginalization of agriculture is manifested by the sector's lower contribution to GDP is just a couple of percent. Then employment opportunities is low, and negligible food supply, safety, and food security issues. So food security is very low. And then the region is rich of water resources. They need to reform the sector and change management, training, extension services, legislation. They should be able to become self-sufficient again in food supply. So then some more about the state of agriculture, that human capital, capacity building in management, research, factors of production, training, extension, and transportation services, goods market development, price support, and guarantees are crucial to achieve this national agricultural goal. So this means recovering the agriculture, restating its role. Research capacity plays a role in providing clear picture of the actual situation, identification of necessary policy measures to achieve the goal, and enhances productivity and the blessing of oil and gas sector and reducing the curse effect. The priorities could be like internal farm solution, external society solution, and also strategic national solution to agriculture. So all three must go together. We need legislative measures that are in progress, but actually we have President of Iraq is Kurd, several ministers are Kurd, we have many parliament members, but all they do, they bring back the old legal system, laws from Iraq that they were developed in 1960s and 70s, and since then they never developed because of war and domestic conflicts. So, so they have a negative role, not positive. So priority be given to rebuilding the destroyed agriculture and water resources infrastructure to create conditions so people can go back to the rural area and farm. Promote general interest in farming, supporting producer association, coordination efforts from different ministries and interest in rural development. Develop agriculture policy should protect and improve domestic product by restricting imports that are harmful to health and also self-sufficiency, and promote biodiversity. So success of reforms require clear vision. We need a specific roadmap. We need capable organization and resources. So agricultural ministry needs really to be reformed, and also, of course, Ministry of Natural Resources. So oil and gas sector, they have developed quite fast, but at the cost that we have lost control of our natural resources and is the hand of international oil companies. But the region become too dependent on energy sectors and the economy is not diversified. So it means we are vulnerable to this dependency. Exploitation of resources should provide the economy much needed capital, management and advanced technologies. Labor force lacks skills and the manufacturing industry is in infant stage. The differences in sectors growth rate is a result of business-driven development strategy, lack of national protective regulations, and also we have no clear industrialization policy. The business-driven development strategy is a result of influential decision makers that focus only on own business and regulates things towards short-term planning and their own profit interests. So we have a currently governance, politics, business relations that is very unusual, because relationship between governance and business is very important, but without intervention of politics. University should play a role there, not politics. So capacity building, we need to increase the knowledge, management, skill, production, and other capabilities through acquisition, training, learning, and development in a systematic way. So capacity building should target, for instance, employees at the ministries, associated agencies, and it is divided into planning, policy, regulation, research, training, extension service, evaluation, and feedback. We don't have all these elements like planning and policy, like proper training, like research and regulation, and also evaluation and feedback. It's hardly done, this element. So the petroleum sector increases imported goods and services. That is the direct effect of it. Domestic products cannot compete. Public projects are implemented by foreign companies and workforce, with a very little spillover effect to domestic workforce and governance. So appropriate allocation of revenues between different sectors can result in diversified economies, but we need to go this way first. So resource distribution should be coupled with improved planning, implementation, monitoring, follow-up, regulation, transparency, accountability, and also upgrading of skill of the labor force and governance. So agriculture is a precondition for successful and balanced development. So the urbanized labor is not really able to compete with imported labor. So that is one. And they cannot even go back to the countryside and retake their agri activities. So the increasing spending on imported goods reduce the production in agriculture. This is direct evidence of Dutch disease. So oil revenue can contribute to development of agriculture through development of infrastructure and productivity, but the region has invested, in many dams, but those dams are currently actually remote controlled by Iraq, so they are not like blocked from upstream to take advantage of the downstream water. So the other factors include the development of roads, supply of machinery, inputs, extension services, supply and demand management policies. So oil revenue should be used for job creation, economic diversification, reducing vulnerability, better trade balance, providing new material for the industry sector, and not purely go to accumulation of asset by corrupt politicians or for consuming goods that has not much feedback on local production. So allocation of oil revenues have contributed to development of infrastructure, housing, utilities, health, education, communication, media, and hospitality industry and training. There is no doubt about it. But still is not really in national interest, but is the interest of business-driven development strategy. So allocation of service sector is high, but service quality and productivity is low. Corruption, weak institutions, lack of planning, and low capability causes the underperformance of the system. So education sector is one area that has benefited greatly from the oil boom. But the region has more than 20 universities, but so far to very little use in supply of skilled and competitive workforce that can substitute the foreign workforce. So KRG, in an effort to enhance capacity of the labor, they allocated hundreds of millions of dollars every year to grants and sent out public servants and students to well-known universities abroad, but actually there has been a very little effect from it. Either they don't complete their studies or they don't go back. If they go back, probably they do not assign them to right places. So lack of investment opportunities in mining and industry has led to excessive public and private investment in unproductive and consumption-driven services. Then the summary is basically regions depends on rapidly developed oil and gas sector and import of materials, service, and skilled labor. Oil and gas revenue, they can be used to develop and diversify the economy without doubt. Many countries have succeeded with this policy. The region pursues reduction of the dependency on oil and gas through investment and service and industry sectors, but it is very difficult to take off because of unskilled labor and unskilled policy makers and planners. So industry sector still is infant stage. It requires research to identify the weaknesses, to develop its management, transparency, accountability, and efficiency resource management to develop and to meet the public demands are necessary. Challenges are associated with resource curse impacting agricultural sectors. We know what they are, but we need regulation and policy to be able to to reduce these resource curse effects. A reformed and developed agricultural sector can form a major and diversified economic pillar. Then policy recommendations that I have is the aim must be achievement of national goals of, say, openness, self-sufficiency, inclusive growth, and sustainable development. So to increase the ability and flexibility to mitigate the negative impact of resource curse and to promote the natural resources blessing to enhance the region's growth and development. The use of dual currency that it existed after the Iraq's invasion increased flexibility by reducing transaction cost of exchange and no fear for devaluation of the local currency and repatriation of profit by foreign investors in their own currency. So that was very useful. So a comprehensive long-run economic plan is important where oil revenue management is a significant element. To build the oil and gas managerial model, establish a national oil company, not give away to foreign oil companies. And that is a Norwegian style to promote the blessing and to prevent the curse effects. Then diversification with emphasis on balanced development and production of mining, industry, service, and agriculture is very important. For instance, in Kurdistan, before they build 1 million houses, all this road and infrastructure, they should develop mining to use local material, but they never did that. Instead of investing first in mining, developing service and industry in parallel with mining and have a spillover effect to agriculture, they went immediately to service, import-based service sector. That was not very effective. So introduce progressive taxation system to smoothen the flow of public revenues, reducing dependency on oil and gas, which leads to low growth, corruption, and inefficiency. Create stabilization fund of oil and gas revenue during the high price periods and use it for budget stabilization during recessions or low price oil and gas. Then develop institutional capacity building in planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, and feedback to policy making. Introduce regulatory policies of investment, import, taxation, environment, education that leads to able, accountable, and transparent decision-making process. Decouple governance from influence of politics and business to strengthen the blessing of the natural resources. Then have a vision, plan, policy, implement, and evaluate like a normal societies. A dynamic, adaptive, and nation builder and development-minded approach is very important. Invest in capability, exchange, and self-sufficiency, not just consuming, but exchange. Promote national interest and ways of thinking, reform the education, institution, and governance, introduce high civil servant examination that has been applicable in countries like Taiwan, like Singapore, like Korea, like Japan, that you can never have a high civil servant position if you do not pass this exam. Discourage, prohibit governance, politics, business relations. Promote governance, instead promote governance, university business cooperation. Produce statistics, promote evaluation, transparency, accountability. Abolish practice of backwardness of tribalism, nepotism, and nomination, and lifetime high ranks positions, and instead allow people with ability to do those, occupy those positions for limited time. Then higher education and development policy to be financed by natural resources and be inclusive and target greater Kurdistan, not only the region. Since Kurds, they have never been able to demand their rights, and protect themselves. They are in a hostile area. So I suggest establishment of national legal team, which should consist of retired, internationally experienced lawyers and diplomats, assisted by national lawyers to work with documentation and preparation of legal national cases of crime against Kurds by many in neighboring countries. So the crime cases include, for instance, Halabja, Anfal, forced migration, displacement, genocide, destruction of nature, the rural areas, landmine, Arabization of areas, appropriation of land, imprisonment, torture, killing, discrimination, and many other forms of aggression against Kurds in Kurdistan. Then the legal team's activities include also other national, intergovernmental, international relations and agreement, which are of national interest and where KRG or Kurds in general have currently low or no capacity to manage. And Halabja and Anfal, there are two examples of that. After more than 30, 40, 45 years, still we have not been able to deal with them. So establish victim compensation fund to support the state, survivors, families and victims, and to finance the national legal team, and also use this compensation in billions of dollars as a deterrence for future crime against Kurds. And I hope someday KRG helps to establish this national legal team to solve its own problem also. I thank you for listening to me. Now I have finished my 45 minutes and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Heshmati, for that very informative and interesting presentation. As you illustrated in your presentation, the improvement and really diversification of economic sector of any government, especially oil-dependent economies like Kurdistan, is fundamental for the development in its future. So, thank you again for your time and attention to this. We'll welcome questions for Professor Heshmati at this moment.
There is a question by Sohaib to Professor Heshmati. Could cryptocurrency help economic KRG in future?
Yeah, let me stop the share. Probably that one is blocking. Now I can see that its first question is from Kak Jamal, which say this is the first one that will be entirely in English. You answer some question.
Right. But, yeah, the last sentence says, could cryptocurrency help economic of KRG in the future?
Possibly not fully rely on cryptocurrency because we don't know about its stability and use, because not all economies and governance and international institutions, they have accepted it. So it's a limited use. And especially in trade, investment probably is interesting from individual perspective, even institutional perspective, but definitely not from governance perspective. I hope I gave a sufficient answer, satisfactory answer.
I think, Shahram, you still have your hand raised. I tried to unmute you if you can see if you could ask your question.
We have about 10 minutes. Still, we have time. I hope they can ask their questions. While we are waiting for their question to be in written or unmute their mic and ask, I want to mention that a number of areas that are very important, especially from perspective of development and better governance, and also for you who study abroad. One is a National Economic Commission. When I worked three years in Erbil, we worked with it, but it didn't continue, which was very important monthly meeting by key ministers and also Prime Minister, which I think is not continued. Then we developed World Kurdish Congress, Association of Academicians. We had meeting every year. I hope they can take up this one. We had 3 meetings, but it stopped. Then National Research Foundation, which is very important because KRG support education abroad, but they don't have a research foundation. So this means there is no research done to influence policy and reforms and also regulations. Then we have, we don't have National Research Institute. I established one, but I had to shut it down because it was not supported by regional government. Then joint graduate program is very important to have such a joint program between universities in Kurdistan that they can share course resources, research, and databases. That is very important. Then national legal team, I introduced you to that idea. We could have like a high civil servant examination to introduce such, and why not leadership, high leadership civil servant examination, so we are not ruled by illiterate and tribal leaders, but with people who have knowledge and skill and ability to govern better. Then Diaspora Association, there is one that is, there is several smaller ones that are not really integrated into one. So this area are really very important for us to develop in order to be able to be self-sufficient and go in a direction for nation building and independence. So was there any new questions?
I think you now hear me, right?
Yes,
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I changed the settings of my browser. That's why I couldn't unmute myself. So thank you for your interesting presentation. I learned a lot from your presentation. Actually, based on your presentation, I see that there are a lot of opportunities for the region to increase the, to expand the development policies, you know, and the economic growth for the region. But how to prioritize these decision plans or the policies based on the status quo of the region? Like first you're talking about like the diversification among different sectors, but there are mismanagements. How, like, do we need to first start development in different sectors, or we should work on development on the infrastructure or mismanagement, or I don't know, whatever, like you think. So thank you if you a little bit explain about the prioritization.
Thank you for attending the seminar and this interesting question. Actually, the root of the problem is lack of accountability and transparency. It's a structural problem in the society. If we had accountability and transparency, we could have like a Bureau of Statistics collect data, and also we could have like a research and evaluation, and to be able to design policies that is successful. And as long as we don't have this accountability, transparency, and national account that I mentioned, even me as an individual, we are a 2-person family, we have some children, still we have an economy. We know what is our income, what is expenditure, and everything is open. A region, after 30 years of self-governance, still they don't have national account. So just no one knows how much is their revenues and how it is allocated. We see only those parts that they donate to some people, business, and they are very proud about it. So that's why we have a structural problem. We have revenue. We have like they have revenue more than $10 billion every year. And if they use this revenue for development, definitely it will be more than sufficient for this small region. And but it must be spent not on consumption, but on development and local production structure. Then, as I mentioned, they should start with mining to be self-sufficient in material from local production. If you go to Erbil, I worked at the university, I could hardly find the size of a needle that was local production in the whole university. So everything was imported from scratch from neighboring countries, mostly from Turkey. So that is why I talk about why not they didn't start from mining. I wrote several reports helping them, but no one read it, no one listened. So that's why if they had started with the mining, industry also developed with the mining. Service also developed with mining. And agriculture there is a spillover to agriculture. So all four developed in the same way together with good governance and knowledge development. So then it will be diversified and functions very well. And it could become a good example for restructuring of Iraq. So the Kurdish companies could develop instead of Turkish companies work there, and also help the other part of Kurdistan to develop. But unfortunately, we have none of those. And we just got high dependency and no self-sufficiency after all these years.
Would you elaborate on mining? What do you mean by mining? Mining what?
Mining, this means producing metals that you can use it in industrial production and also can be used for infrastructure construction. Everything was imported from Turkey. Because now we have built our 1 million houses and build the infrastructure with imported material. So there is zero space for developing mining now. It's too late. They should do it in the first stage before they started with the development. So I have written a report in 2006, which is about industrial development in Kurdistan region. For those of you who are interested in industrial development, you can look at that report. If you in Google you write my name and industrial development, you'll find it.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Professor.
No, I'm at your service, so please ask.
No, it's very interesting. No, I'm hearing all of these different you're talking about all of these different sectors and this wide range of opportunities, or for the government to step in and really develop. One that really comes to my mind is also the tourism sector. I mean, I think that we can learn a lot from case studies, in other parts of Asia and Middle East. What can you say about particularly the tourist sector and how it can be developed? Is it through something that you can see that the government really can spearhead, or is it my personal inclination is to say that this is something that will require more business, collaborations or international entities to come in maybe and also create jobs in this private sector, because I think like over 50% I had read of the jobs currently in KRG are public sector, and so I think that this is an upcoming sector for the government to keep its eye on, and I know that the ministry has done a lot of work, but I wanted to sort of hear your take on it.
I agree with you that excuse me. I agree that hospitality industry is important in every society. But in Kurdistan region, hospitality industry is simply because of business-driven development strategy. That business is the key issue, not development in general, that targeting the society and welfare. So in Kurdistan, those who become rich, they either build a hotel or they started a university. There is no other businesses that is developed, and private school, daycares, that is what, and restaurants, that is what they invested in. And that was like a flocking in those areas. And who is running, operating those businesses? Universities, hotels, and restaurants is the foreign labor force. They are not local people. So that's why the effect on the economy was really minimal. It was just a way of investing your stolen money to make it like a wide. So that's why it was not very effective, and it may not last very long in productive way, because they are the manpower is not local people basically. So they didn't learn from its operation and development. Any other questions? So what I said, it was lots of not very integrated, but disintegrated topics. I made it such that I give you some keywords to those who are abroad and want to write thesis, master, PhD, or bachelor. So if you look at the words, you always can find something that is of interest to you. So that was the reason why I made it so general and not very focused on specific areas. And I'll be available. Any one of you have any questions, you need help, my help, I can assist you. So please get in touch. You have my email on the cover page, and I will send the file to Kak Jamal to make it available to people who wants to read it.
We sure appreciate it, and we sure will reach out. I personally will reach out to you yourself. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure to meet you, and please do not hesitate to contact me if you need more seminars. I have some more related to this region.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for today.
Thank you. And Zeelamo Academy, of course.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Bye-bye. Bye.
I just want to quickly add here that
oh, yes, please.
For our viewers, I apologize. But again, I want to thank you, Professor Heshmati, that these sorts of collaborations and seminars really are the cornerstone of Zeelamo Academy, and educators like yourself are what drive generations of young minds to pursue a future for better future for our society. So thank you for your time and effort again. And then I quickly want to just mention that our upcoming seminar will be live on April 18th. 2021 at 8:30 p.m. Rojhelat time, and we will be joined by Professor Ibrahim Karimi, an award-winning professor of physics at the University of Ottawa in Canada, to discuss quantum physics. So please stay tuned for that. And again, thank you everybody involved, our viewers. Stay safe and take care until next time. And goodbye and malawa.
Thank you very much. Thank you. See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.